That is really cute, Matthew. We appreciate you. Matthew's like, are you going to listen to your mother and do what she says? And he's like, yeah, that's awesome. All right, here we go. We are looking, oh wait, first we want to do that prayer request. Helen's doing really well. So that's one person. Who else? Cheryl Foster, but not yet. And, all right. We have, don't forget, we have January 22nd prayer request. You can put in a prayer request for Bruce. It's okay. And elders at longmontcoc.org, or you can fill out the little card and put it in that back offering box. Almost said orphan box. It's like it is by itself, so it is orphaned. But the offering box, and then or you can hand it to them. They'll actually take them. And so, and they would really like to have some more. And so, share with them prayer request that you are having, and then they promise to pray. Okay, that's January 22nd. Also on the 28th, there's a fellowship meal. And so make plans to stay for that. It's supposed to be cold this Sunday, but not so snowy. So, bundle up. Come on down. We get more of us in here, right? It gets warmer. You can sit together. That's right. And no news yet on any babies being born. Let's see. Almost. A couple of days. But they thought he'd come early. And so they've been saying that all along. And we're going to get to the 17th. It's going to be like, what? It's the way babies work. It's cold out there. That's right. What else is coming up that we should announce? Or I know there's a bunch of youth stuff. Jimmy's telling the youth all of that stuff. So.
We have ice skating on Saturday.
Oh.
I usually do our announcements over there, but yes, Saturday 2 o'clock.
Where is their ice?
The Longmont Ice Skating Pavilion.
Okay.
And then we're coming here for hot chocolate after.
I was going to say, you'll be pretty cold after that. But they won't care. They're teens. They hadn't even started wearing coats yet or anything, right? Okay. Well, good. Thanks for coming tonight. We're going to go our separate ways. We were going to start singing a song each week. Who was I in communication with on that?
Are you under the influence of drugs?
We're ready to do that. I know. So, Phil, you're here. Next Wednesday night, can you have one? Okay. And then email it, or email Lance, or email Kim, and then we'll even put it on the board. He can put it up there really fast. And so, because we were going to sing a song or two. Well, it's like Wednesday night, everybody's head's like mush, and we need the words.
Speak for yourself.
Most of our braids, there's a few of us, prophet.
Don't cross her.
I know. She'll lay bare all of my problems in front of.
And she'll throw me in there just to boot.
Well, you have a lot of problems too.
I know, but they're you.
We need to pray. All right, everyone, it's good to see you. Any other things over here in the back area? No? Okay. You guys are doing well? Okay. All right. I know that, this is the season for people to be sick and all of that to go through the ranks. And so we've had, of course, staff that are sick and, everything else. We had 319 in attendance on Sunday, so it was a good Sunday. But anyway, now they're all going to be sick because we were all together. It's all good. All right. Well, let's say a prayer. Father, we do praise you for your great love and mercy and for the ability to just work in all of our lives in so many ways without us knowing it. And you're involved in millions and billions of people's activities, and you're sustaining the universe, and you are also having plans for the very far future. And so we praise you for your power and grace and love. And we do lift up those that have just had surgery, that you will heal them, and those that are coming up to surgery, that you will make those successful. And Father, we are mindful, of course, of many people that need to hear the gospel and need to be a part of your church family. So we pray for those folks and for harvesters. And Father, we are also thankful that you've given us your word, and help us to gain wisdom from that. And it's in your Son's name we pray. Amen. Go. Here we go, Proverbs. I grabbed a Bible just now from somewhere, and it's an NIV, so I apologize for the inaccurate readings that we are about to do. NIV, might as well be, right? Message. Now. Okay, here's what we're doing. We have been in 1 Samuel on Sunday morning. And now we're going to be in Proverbs, of course, on Wednesday night. Wow, I can't find a thing in this Bible. There it is, Proverbs. And so we've introduced the book and this thing called wisdom. And tonight we're going to jump into, remember, we're not doing a verse-by-verse study of the book, of course. We'd study about 12 verses and we'd be done. And so instead we want to kind of take off chunks of it and talk about some of the major themes, some of the major ways you read it, what it's all about. And so, we're skipping around and doing all kinds of stuff here. And so we, of course, will get more and more reading into some of the different Proverbs, like we will tonight. But just remember, we're going to be skipping all over the place. And so if you really can't just like outline the book, of course. You can't just like, okay, let's do an outline, because it doesn't work that way. And so that's a part of it. And a part of it is the very nature of the way he actually writes the book. And one of those is what we're going to talk about right now. And so here we go, Proverbs. Any last comments? I know we talked about, anybody remember the last points of last Wednesday night? Who was here Wednesday night? Oh, wow, Bruce actually took notes. I didn't have any notes that night. I believe we ended up talking about loyalty. That's it, because you were in there. Loyalty and compassion is better than sacrifice. And so this concept of loyalty and compassion has a lot to do with wisdom. And so we'll see that as we go through, and of course look a little bit at James chapter 3, and where he talks about wisdom from above is the following things. And so we'll get over there eventually. Here's what we're doing first tonight. I want to remind you that this book of Proverbs is actually narrative. So think about that for a moment. This isn't a law or rule book or a bunch of regulations. What's a narrative? A story. This book is actually a story. Now, when you read it, if you're not really thinking through, it's going to read like a bunch of disorganized thoughts or concepts or principles about how to not do certain things and do certain things. But that's not really the book. The book's actually a story. What is the story? The basic story of Proverbs. Every single verse, you want to filter through this particular view. So we talk about, so I'm really stepping back for a moment, we talk about worldviews, like having a biblical worldview. What does it mean to have a biblical worldview? Like, most people, we think, oh, everybody's always sinned and everybody's always been bad, and that's true. But everybody was sinning and was bad, especially in Western civilization hundreds of years ago. But they had a stronger biblical worldview, and so it was clearer how it was, certain things were clearer. So,
It's like a view of morality,
yeah.
because the Bible teaches us what's right and wrong.
So it's like a pair of glasses, right? All of us have our conceptions, misconceptions, things that have been taught us, stuff that's been handed down to us from families or teachers or whoever it might be, and we take those concepts and misconceptions, 'cause some of them are wrong, of course, and all that other stuff, and we put it on, and once we do that, it filters everything we see. And you'll notice people will write, or like journalists or whoever it might be, commentators or whoever, and they'll see the exact same thing you saw, and they will see it how? Completely different. Well, that's because they've got a different set of glasses. So their focus is different, and their ability to see certain things is different. And so, one person may say, wow, those people had a really great time. And the next person may go, those people really sinned really badly. And there's going to be some consequences, I bet. And so it's all about how we see it. So there's that worldview. And so all of us we already have been trained by the Bible to see things a certain way as Christians. Like we've been trained to see that who's our biggest enemy? Ourselves. That's a biblical worldview. That the enemy's not out there, the enemy's in here. So that's a biblical worldview versus kind of a worldly point of view or a Hindu worldview or on and on the list goes of different ways, places. I'll talk about Hindu worldview, right? Like in Hinduism, it would be wrong not to steal if stealing it brought you what your family needed. And so it'd actually be wrong. That's immoral to not steal if your family needs it. And so you have to work that out for a little while. It's like, wait a minute, I get bad karma if I don't do this thing that's wrong. Well, they wouldn't see it as wrong. They'd see it as the right thing to do. And so that's a whole different view than Christians, right? Most of us probably would think, no, they don't really believe that, do they? Yeah, they do. That's their glasses, their worldview. And so leaving a cow that's been hit by a car out on the side of the road, and it just kind of lingers for days and days and then finally dies, we in our worldview would say, You shouldn't do that. It would be cruel. But in a Hindu worldview, I've seen it happen many, many times, because cows are sacred and they worship them, and that cow can't be touched. And so it just finally dies. And you're like, well, that's really strange. Plus, they have a fatalistic output. It was meant to be, so leave it alone. We, of course, more Texan worldview, it's like, can we go ahead and take it now and put it out of its misery? And then we're having beef for a while. May not be the best beef, but it'll be some beef. And anyway, no. Ooh, man, that would create a riot. You want to talk about creating a riot? Wow, that would do it. Anyway, so saying all of that to say, reading the book of Proverbs, we want to train ourselves to look through the glasses of the story, because every proverb expects us to do that. So what is it that Proverbs is trying to tell us? So this is the kind of the basics here, and then we'll try a couple of them. So if you really want to understand the Proverbs, you understand the story, that they're not mechanical. The story is embedded in every single proverb, and it's the redemptive story. What's the redemptive story? There were three pieces, right? First, God created the garden, and everything was perfect, and he designed it well. And when you read the Proverbs, you ought to mourn the loss of God's perfect world. In other words, Proverbs brings us back to that, wow, there's like this perfect place that God designed. But we know that's not all the story. If we were in the perfect place, in the perfect garden, things would work perfectly. But it doesn't, because we know the second plot, the second theme, the second concept of the story. What is it? Mankind sinned. So mankind's sin creates a dysfunctional world. And because the world's dysfunctional and doesn't operate the way God intended it to operate, we're confronted with a world where foolishness is everywhere. The opposite of wisdom, it's everywhere. So everything dark, and there's temptation that exists. And so Proverbs expects us to see that in the equation, that there's a perfect world that God desired, there's a dark world of sin that's now corrupt. But of course, what's the third major plot line? We talked about this word Sunday morning. God sent his son to redeem us, but not just us. He sent his son to redeem what? The whole world. Not just the whole world of people, but the whole world. He is redeeming the earth. Like, what did the earth do to deserve weeds? Nothing. It was all because of our sin. So he redeems it also. That's why you always see the text saying God's bringing in a new heaven and a new earth, because he's got to redeem everything. And so earth itself cries out for that redemption. And so that's the third major component. So let's try one. Proverbs 15, verse 1. Or 2. Yeah, we got to get to our main topic here, but Proverbs 15:1. If I can turn the pages. Wow. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. So a soft or gentle answer turns away wrath. A harsh word stirs up anger. So first, does this proverb tell us that every time you speak softly to an angry person, they will stop being angry? Is that the way it happens? No. So see, you've just used your what? You've used your story filter. You know that because we've sinned and now this world is dysfunctional, that just because you use a soft word, it doesn't mean that it de-escalates the situation. And so that's using the story concept, isn't it? So what is this verse about? Only verse 1. You're not going to find it. One of the other thing about Proverbs, you really can't go very much further, can you? As far as finding out the context and going, okay, that's what that thing's about. A gentle answer turns away anger, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Okay, part of this is because it's dysfunctional, this is still the first plot. We're still in God's world, and sometimes this might work because we're in the remnants of the good that was made by God, and sometimes gentle words do work. Okay? So that's looking at it through that first plot line. So see, it's like my perspective changes the meaning of the verse to some degree. All three are correct, but all three give us a different perspective. So I'm not saying truth is relative. I'm saying truth is complex, right? It's like truth is truth, but this is all very complex because, yeah, sometimes it really does work. We have lots of people that come in our building every day. And some people are very angry because of all the terrible things that have happened to them and by them and through them and, way outside of anybody's control here, right? And many times we have people in the building who are like not just people who've been trained, but actually go out and train other people in things like verbal de-escalation. And so you'll see it, like Carrie and Sheil and a couple of these folks that go out and train others how to do that. And most of the time you'll see them and it's like that person kind of goes, after a while. You're like, wow, that's nice. They've stopped being so angry at the universe for this moment. And then other times, what will the person do? So that's kind of like the first plot line. But then there's the second plot line. It's a dysfunctional world. And literally, you watch and people will literally look at one of them and go, stop trying to de-escalate me. You're saying all that just to make me less angry. I know what you're doing. You're just trying to make me not angry anymore. And you're like, yes. Because they've had it happen so many times and people have used that way of dealing with them so many times and they're dysfunctional. It's difficult, right? And the world's a bad place some days, right? And all of us have a reason to be critical of all kinds of things, right? And so that's the second one. What about this thing called redemption? First Peter 2:23, right? How did Jesus, when he was threatened, what did he do? In the garden, they cut off the ear and he said, stop that. And he reacted to the anger of the chief priests and Jews and Pharisees as well as the Romans. How did he react to them? With compassion and with gentle words, and he remained as a lamb led to the slaughter. And what did that result in? Victory. So there's three angles, is what I'm saying when we read Proverbs. You can read it from a perfect garden perspective. You can read it from a dysfunctional world perspective, or you read it from a redemptive Christ perspective. Because even if the crowds remained angry, did Jesus win the day through gentleness? Yes. That's how he did his redemptive thing. They killed him on the cross. We've been redeemed. His way worked. And so there's every proverb has one of those three things. So it would be fun. I've not done it, but I think that'd be a fun activity, right? Just kind of pick certain verses and attempt to do that with that verse. Because all three are going to be in every single proverb. And so, I've not done every one of them, but I bet every one of them are still going to work. And so now with that, unless anybody has any thoughts from that, it's like if I answer in the way the proverb says to be, it may not change the other person, but I'm moving in the direction of being like Christ. So that's that third plot, how to be more like Christ. And so hopefully that makes sense of how it's multifaceted, this thing. Wisdom's hard because wisdom comes from, where does wisdom come from? From God, from above. So it's hard because it's like coming from above. It's not us. It's not in us to be like this normally. Okay, so Proverbs 7 through 9. That's where we're going to camp out here the rest of the time. Yeah. Uh-huh. Mm. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're part of this dysfunctional world. Here we are. Yep. Yes. Well, here's our challenge for tonight. We're going to take a moment and look at the two different women or ladies that exist in the book. So this is a very prominent theme, the two women that exist in the book. And so here's the two ways you can look at them. There is Madame Folly, and there is Dame Wisdom. So it's kind of the two people. And they're more than just concepts, right? It's almost like they're two women. And who are you going to listen to or follow? You're going to follow one woman or the other. And so we already know from Proverbs 1, right? The world's evil, there's evil people, and there's all this ways of evil that's taking place. But then he starts into this concept of these two kinds of women. And it's very powerful. It's difficult for us, even in the culture you're in, to understand it, right? Sheila and I just gotten back from India. We were in an Indian food store in Nashville. We've started up the gig at Freed Hardeman teaching. And of course, we're still at Harpeth Hills. And we're in a store in Nashville at the Indian food. And the owner is like helping us get some stuff. We're looking around. He goes and helps another couple. Then he comes back to us. And I said, it's okay. You can help the Gujaratis if you need to, and you can come back to us. And he looked at me like I was an alien. And he just said, how did you know he was a Gujarati? And I'm like, he's a Gujarati. No, I said, we've been living and studying in India for the last 10 years now. He's like, oh, and because the couple's from Gujarat, it's because they wear certain things and do certain things, and just mainly they wear certain things, and women wear certain earrings that only Gujaratis wear, and she had a pair of them on. It's like, they're Gujarati. And so, probably, and of course that guy knew, right? He would have been able to tell, they're 412th degree on the such and such caste. He really could have. But anyway, you think about that. When we look at people, can we peg them always? And if we can, like, have you ever gone, like, on a ride with a policeman in a large city? Isn't that incredible? I mean, he's just like, he's got the window down. Hey, Jen. And keep driving. She's a prostitute. I've been working with such and such on such and such. And he's driving around. Oh, that's so-and-so. They've been homeless for a couple of years. And you look and you're like, well, I mean, he knows them, but he really knows them, right? He knows them in the sense of, because they have a look. They have a way. They're just, right? It's who they are. And so we are losing a lot of that, of course. It's more and more difficult maybe to see some of that when we look at people. But that's a very important concept to the two women, because one's an adulteress and one's wisdom. And so he's going to get all into that, of course, in the text. And so we should too, just a little bit, because there's this contrast of character. It's really Proverbs 1 all the way through 9. And so let's just read a couple of places. So I'm going to skip around. Here we go, Proverbs 2. Remember, this is a father to the son. I think ultimately he's trying to help his son pick a little better than others or something, right? Like, be careful who you're going to go out with, kind of thing. So chapter 2, verse 16. If you do this and that, it will save you from the adulteress, from the wayward wife with her seductive words, who has left the partner of her youth and ignored the covenant she made before God. For her house leads down to death, and her paths to the spirit of the dead. None who go to her return or attain the paths of life. So that's his introduction to the bad side, the evil woman. And so there's that introduction. So who is she? I mean, she's an adulteress. And she's ignored her covenant. And where does her house lead to? Death. Okay. Chapter 5. This one's a rather lengthy one. Starting in verse 1. My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Listen well, that you maintain discretion, and that your lips preserve knowledge. For the lips of an adulteress drip honey. Her speech is smoother than oil. In the end, she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. She gives no thought to the way of life. Her paths are crooked, but she knows it not. Now then, my sons, listen. Do not turn aside from what I say. Keep to a path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house, lest you give your best strength to others and your years to the one who is cruel. Okay, so he gives a warning. So now we learn that not only is this evil woman that's like displaying evil, how does she work?
Smoothly.
What's smooth?
The way she talks.
The way
presents
she
herself.
talks
Yeah.
is smooth. What does that mean? Is the way of evil. What is it, or what's the weapon here? What's the weapon of the evil woman? Okay, deceit. Okay.
I mean, her lips drip honey, but
Her lips drip honey.
in the end, it's gone. So it's deceitful.
Yeah, it's deceitful. I mean, her way is to death. All right, guys. We are not experts at this, which is awesome. Well, I mean, she sometimes is sensual. She's an adulteress. Okay, oh, sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Because the concept you're hitting at is very much a John concept in 1 John. See, what is she really all about? Like, this isn't just, hey, I'm evil and I'm coming up here and I'm going to deceive you and you're going to listen. Why would you listen to someone like that? So her weapon, and this is what's going to come out in the text, but again, this is like we're looking at Proverbs so that when we look at Proverbs and this stuff, all I'm doing is pulling out, okay, here's the Proverbs thought. It's like this is her weapon. Her weapon is very simple. It is man's pride, right? It's my ego that she hits. See, it's words of sweet honey. You are so handsome, or you're so smart, or you deserve better than that. Or see, those are all words that can be very nice to hear. You don't deserve that treatment. You deserve better than that. If we go to modern day kind of marriage stuff, probably all of you know this, right? We'd call it the love bank concept, right? And who's putting deposits in your love bank? And that's how affairs get started, right? It's like, your wife has been with you for 16 years, has had 3 children, is worried about the doctor's visit tomorrow and all that stuff. And there's all this, like, there's hurry up and go, and there's do this and do that. And we see all each other briefly right before breakfast, but kid number 2 is sick, and kid number 3 needs to ride to wherever. And, right, it goes on and on and on and on. And you guys are like little ships in the night passing each other. And then there's this secretary at work who's going ka-ching every day, right? Oh, you look so handsome today, whoever you are. Or, you really do a good job in this work. Or, why isn't your wife helping out more with the kids? Well, she's only helping out 23.5 hours a day already, but she puts those little things in there into your love bank, right? And so if you get more credits in your love bank from someone else besides your spouse, and you get more deficits from your spouse, you're on the road to what? Deficit spending, right? To some really bad things. Bankruptcy's going to occur, and it won't be pretty, right? And so, but Proverbs is teaching that same concept. I wonder if the guy got it out of Proverbs. Anyway, he did, matter of fact. But anyway, that's for another day, because I know the guy. But so you think about this. It's like this person uses her words that hit the ego, right? It's pride. So that's her weapon, our pride. And then she can come in and work it. A couple other places where it hits this concept. Chapter 7. Let's hit that one. Chapter 7, 19. She'll say to her victim, "My husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He took his purse filled with money and will not be home till the full moon." With persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once he followed her, like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose, till an arrow pierces his liver, like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it will cost him his life. Her house is a highway to the grave, verse 27, leading down to the chambers of death. So there's this, it's like her words. It's her words more than anything else. And the words are all about you, right? Okay. Well, let's go back to chapter 3. So now we'll have the other side. Chapter 3, verse 13. "Blessed is the man who finds wisdom, the man who gains understanding. For she," and then this starts our long story of the wisdom that's from God, "is also a woman, and she is more profitable than silver and yields better returns than gold. She is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand, in her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are pleasant ways, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Those who lay hold of her will be blessed." She is a tree of life. Isn't that a great concept? Obviously, that's a very overt 3-plot verse, right? That one's an easy one. Do you see the garden and the perfection point? Well, yeah, we all remember there's a tree of life in the garden. All right, do you see the dysfunction side of it? Yeah, if you don't turn to her, you'll go down this evil pathway of death. And you can definitely hear the third story. It's like, she's the tree of life. Well, who is the tree of life? Jesus. And so there's the messianic component of redemption. And so some of these are very overt. That one's an overt, get all three flavors. And really, when you have a chance to read Proverbs, you're supposed to read a chapter every day and then get through it each month here for 2 months. That's your assignment, read Proverbs, right? Hopefully you're doing that. But then, if you ever get a chance, take a chapter and just hit these verses like that with these 3 views, these 3 viewpoints. And some of them, like that verse, will be very obvious. It's like, oh yeah, this is talking about Jesus. And so, that's another way we say it, right? What is wisdom? Whatever Jesus thinks about anything, right? That's the wise thing to see it, because he's the tree of life. Anyway, all that stuff's intermarried in there, I know. But anyway, back to this woman. And so we have that contrast all the way to Proverbs 30. Because the whole book does this. It's just 7 through 9 in particular. We'll get a chance to focus in on here. Proverbs 30, verse 20. No, I'm not wanting that. Nah, I don't want that. Nah, we'll get to it eventually. Oh, no, I do. Sorry. Proverbs 30, verse 20. This is the way, so this is back to the evil one. This is the way of the adulteress. She eats and wipes her mouth and says, I've done nothing wrong. It's like she didn't really do anything wrong, because all she did is just tell you how awesome you are. So she ends up not doing anything really wrong. She's just telling you that you're awesome and great and deserve more or whatever, right? And so when we think about that sin, if we could hear sin talking to us, what would sin sound like? I think it'd sound like her, right? I think this is what sin sounds like. It's like, but you deserve it, but you need it, but it doesn't matter. I don't know, lots of things, right? Sin can say to us. Obviously, we have the perfect example of Satan tempting Jesus and what Satan said to him, right? Was that same thing? It was just words. It's just words that, and Jesus has to keep saying, I'm not going to listen to those words. It's not about me, it's about God, right? So he's hitting right where we're talking about here in the plots of these things. Anyway, so that'd be another way of thinking about it, the temptations of Jesus. Okay, chapter 4, 6 through 8. Do not forsake wisdom. She will protect you. Love her, and she will watch over you. Wisdom is supreme. Therefore, get wisdom. Though it cost all you have, get understanding. Esteem her, and she will exalt you. Embrace her, and she will honor you. She will set a garland of grace on your head and present you with a crown of splendor. So it's just, we're not going to take any more time tonight, and we'll skip on to another one, of course, another of these major concepts. But just seeing that in the text and recognizing these two women that he goes back and forth during the entire time. And it makes sense because he's writing to his son. He's telling his son, and he wants his son to look for a certain person as his wife. And so he takes this thing called wisdom and makes it into a person, both the good and the bad. Very common technique, right? The entire book of Hosea is like this, isn't it? Where Hosea must go and marry a prostitute and have children, all for being the prophet. You start thinking, what kind of weird things does God sometimes have his people do? That is such a weird one, isn't it? Where he marries the prostitute, and then what does he have to do? Years later, he has to redeem her. Right. Do you remember the price? A homer and a half of barley. It's enough money to buy a wounded slave, right? It was just enough to buy a wounded slave. That was her only worth, which is our worth, right? We're the price. We could be purchased because all of us are wounded. We're not really that useful to the kingdom. That's a sub-message of Hosea. You're not really that worthwhile to the kingdom. So stop thinking and listening to the evil woman here. And recognize that God loves us, of course, and buys us and redeems us, but we're not worth that much. It's all about him. That's right.
Well, and I think it proves that there's consequences in everything on both sides. You can get rewards from doing right. And if you do wrong, there are consequences.
Yeah.
And it's basically stating that throughout
Yeah.
the whole Proverbs.
Yeah.
There are consequences to your actions.
Yes. Yeah.
We've lost that today in America in different places.
Well, yeah, I mean,
There are no consequences.
that's a biblical worldview, isn't it? That there are consequences to our actions. And we try to teach that to people, don't we? That there are consequences. Yes. If you take away the consequences, though, then you're not going to have people learning the lesson. I think that would be a summary of some of our cultural problems. Sure. Yeah. If we don't, but as we all know, what happens in the end? No, even if we don't teach them, what always happens? They always come back because it's the way that God made everything. What goes up will eventually fall back to the earth. Right? Gravity has its way. And so everything always, there's always consequences, right? Sooner or later to every action. That is it. So the deal is, how can we learn them before we have to experience them ourselves? That's a really good consequence. You look at somebody else and go, "Ugh, I don't want to do that."
Which is the wisdom.
Right.
The wisdom that we need to.
Yep. Yep. Well, we're out of time. So thanks, guys. I know Proverbs is weird. It's just a weird book, isn't it? It's just different. And so understanding that it's a story, Father, Son, but really it's a story of how the world was created, how dysfunction occurred, sin, and how God redeems it. And you'll see that in every proverb. So what does that mean? It means sometimes they're contradictory. Sometimes they don't seem to work in every situation. Sometimes they don't seem to be accurate, but they are. It just depends upon the context of where you're at and what you're doing.
So there's wisdom for King Alexander. It says she, wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
she. So is that
Yeah.
wisdom is the
Yeah. Yeah. He always says she. She was there at creation. She's. I mean, they're both women. Both the Madame Folly as well as the good woman. They're both women. So all it's doing is it's showing that it's personal. This isn't abstract. It's not like, this really isn't, this is like, actually, it's the most practical thing we could be talking about, right? It's like every time every single one of us sins, it's because our pride has gotten in the way. And so that is very practical, isn't it? And we've bought into some lie from honey that's dropped from lips, right? Mostly it's our own lips telling us, do this, it's okay, you deserve it, or whatever it might be. So, well, all right, guys. You guys keep it up. We'll see you here. Thanks for coming tonight.